Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going, as I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. China has retaliated, a 34% tariff. And so we see the beginning of a trade war. And let me be crystal clear. This war is taking place because of one man and his policies, Donald Trump. And it will affect all of us on so many different levels. I was talking to someone in the coffee business just yesterday, and I said, how will the tariffs affect the price of coffee? He said, every morning when you drink that cup of joe, you're going to feel the impact. And I think that's the key. The same applies to cars. Are you planning to buy a new car? Well, maybe not, because the tariff on the car increases the price. One thing after another, but I was amused by Howard Lutnick, member of the president's cabinet, a billionaire himself, who made the observation, trust Donald Trump. You got to trust in Trump, he said. Well, that's a question. Do you trust Donald Trump? We remember what Ronald Reagan said about Mikhail Gorbachev. Trust, but verify. Well, we are seeing the verification every single day. And it's not just the economy that we have to reflect upon. It is also our national security. It is now clear that with the president's decision to fire key individuals in national security, that if you are not completely loyal to the president, you're out on your ear. And that is exactly what has happened now in the Department of Defense and in areas of national security and indeed military leaders. There is something to be said for a strong president, because then you have real accountability. But what is equally vital to understand is that with accountability comes responsibility. Will Donald Trump be judged harshly by history? It depends. If he succeeds, if his vision of a stronger America succeeds, yes, indeed, he will be a hero. But if, as I suspect, and as many who look at the economy and national security suspect, if his policies lead to recession and indeed distrust and fear, then Donald Trump will not be recognized in his mind as a great president, but rather as one of the worst we have had in American history. I raise these points with you because I want you to understand that the world is now mobilizing against the economic policies of the United States. What intrigues me is that for the last 80 years, what we have done as a nation has driven the world's economy. We have been the engine which has helped to create the most prosperous world imaginable. Oh, I know there is huge poverty in this world, tremendous problems that exist, war and peace and all the rest. But on balance, the economies of the world have been stable. And now we are seeing instability. One of the things I learned many years ago is that the last thing that a market likes is instability, unpredictability. And one other thing is the whim of an individual who has tremendous power. Let me give you several examples. In our world today, we know that what happens in Ukraine, which is now off the top of the news, is critical. And yet, what we are seeing is Vladimir Putin calling up more and more individuals to fight in his war in Ukraine. Rather than what Donald Trump suggested, that there would be peace immediately upon his election as president, we are seeing a war which is not only dragging on, but which is intensifying. We are not only seeing a war intensifying, but the battle that is taking place among our allies who have little faith in Donald Trump and his abilities, that is becoming a major problem. Why am I raising this with you as we enter a weekend when theoretically, we should be happy and carefree. We are on the verge of Easter and Passover, and, well, people have a feeling of hope. That's what spring is all about, hope. And yet there is a feeling abroad in the land, on the part of many, of despair. And we are told, put your trust in Donald Trump. The dear leader will make sure that all is well. Some podcasts ago, I spoke about 1984, the novel by George Orwell. That novel, in many ways, is coming true today. Because, frankly, we should never trust our leaders, even leaders we have great faith in general. There should always be a challenge to what people who are in power say. That's what keeps them honest. That's what prevents arrogance from overcoming a legitimate leadership. There is no doubt that the Republican Party is now facing a crisis. Do they follow Donald Trump on his path with tariffs? What do they say about academic freedom? And let me say just a quick word about academic freedom. I've discussed it with you before, but the news this morning that Donald Trump is cutting even more money to universities in the theoretical basis of cutting anti-Semitism, well, it's pure rubbish. It's not cutting or destroying anti-Semitism. It's wreaking havoc on those who Donald Trump believes are his political enemies, including universities and colleges across America. This is retribution. This is revenge. This is, to be blunt, a president of the United States out of control. I have talked about balance of power in the past. I want to mention it now to you with even a greater sense of emphasis. We have a system which works because we are not a dictatorship. We do not have rule from the top. We have a Congress, the legislative branch. We have judges, the judiciary, that are supposed to put restraints on an overheated executive. We now face the challenge of reestablishing that balance of power on so many different levels. And one can only express the hope, as I am doing here today, that there will be those kinds of restraints. Otherwise, we will have unchecked power. No, I do not agree with Howard Lutnick. I do not believe in trusting Donald Trump. Quite the contrary. The lesson of history is challenge your presidents. Make sure that the House and the Senate and the judiciary in this country are up to the challenge. Are we up to the challenge? That's the question, ladies and gentlemen. And it's a serious question. On a correct answer lies the future of American democracy. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Make sure to follow along and let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which is, of course, our goal. You can follow me by listening to these podcasts, but also you can interact with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and, of course, by contacting me personally. So many of you do, and I appreciate it. The feedback is very helpful. Even if you disagree with me, well, that's what makes it even more interesting. And to Gogo Zoker, the wonderful producer of this podcast, Gogo, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, that's it for this week. I'll be back on Monday with another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. Heaven only knows where we'll be, but I can tell you this. You and I will be right here listening and watching and commenting right here on Around the Political World with John Rothman. Have a great weekend. See you then.